Hello and thanks for joining us. Today we're talking about the best books of the moment, and I'm joined in the studio by France 24's book critic Kathy Kadir-Clifford. Now you're here to tell us about a very French literary phenomenon known here in France as la rentrée littéraire. Now it's when a whole load of new releases come out in September. Tell us more.
Yes, the autumnal period is when French publishers release more books than at any other time of the year. Not just French authors, also translations, fiction, non-fiction, and it's a real cultural thing for many French book lovers. Really associate the crisp autumnal period with browsing in bookshops. Also the moment when the main literary prizes announce their lists.
Okay, and so how is the La Rentrée littéraire shaping up this year?
Well, this year, a little bit disappointing for the industry. Apparently, according to industry magazine Livre Hebdo, this is the lowest number of books published in 20 years. 524 books published this year, which sounds like a fair amount, but it's actually a 7% drop on last year.
Okay, well, social media could actually be helping the industry to make a comeback. It's likely your social media feed is full of friends' selfies, celebrity product endorsements and food and holiday shots. But there's a whole community out there known by literary lovers as Bookstagram. It's a magical land where bookworms, such as the actress Reese Witherspoon and presenter Oprah Winfrey, post their latest novel recommendations, which could get more people buying books. Lucy Barbajange and Pierre Delrue report.
There's nothing quite like browsing a bookstore for hours in search of your next read. But for Margot and countless others, the choice has already been made on Instagram. In a niche corner of the social media called Bookstagram, readers share dazzling photos of books, staged in appealing settings, and often accompanied by a short description or review. With over 33 million posts tagged #Bookstagram, finding a new read has never been easier.
Even if there's less human contact, access is so much easier. There are so many different accounts and reviews. A single book can have different reviews.
Being a book influencer on Instagram takes time, commitment, and creativity. Alizé and Com created their account Le Studio Littéraire 3 years ago.
Instagram is a visual platform, so even though the reviews are important, the pictures need to be appealing. The goal is to make you want to read it.
Their Instagram account dedicated to books currently has over 22,000 followers. But for the young couple, it's merely a hobby, and being a bookstagrammer is not a superficial way of seeking online popularity.
We don't pretend to be journalists, so yes, maybe it looks a bit superficial, but we're interacting with young readers on social media with short reviews. Literature can often seem out of reach. We connect with young people who don't necessarily know about the literary world and share our love for reading.
The sprawling trend has fast become a marketing asset for publishers. Publishing companies and sometimes even authors send bookstagrammers free books for advertising.
For years now, we've been noticing that traditional marketing, whether it's in the press, working with journalists, or doing ad campaigns, just doesn't have the same impact as, say, 10 years ago. Peer recommendation has become much more important, especially online.
And to make sure their new releases get the proper attention, publishers actively court the most popular accounts.
We put some hydrangeas for a splash of yellow, some blue thistles, and some pastels too.
Anything to get into the influencers' good books.
We're here with France 24's book critic Kathy Kadir-Clifford. Now, do you get flowers in the post?
No, I'm fairly outraged. Didn't get any flowers with these books.
Well, you've picked out some of your favourite books of the season for us. Now, that starts with Saul Chalandon's Une joie féroce, which roughly translates as a fierce joy.
Yes, so this book revolves around the character of Jeanne, who goes off the rails when her life falls apart. She's diagnosed with cancer, and then her husband leaves her. And all this after their young son has died several years before. And the story then revolves around her friendship developing with three women that she meets in chemotherapy. Now, the author of the book, Serge Chalandon, told France 24 how he was inspired to write this following his own wife's battle with cancer.
This isn't a book about cancer, it's about how we survive. What do we do when we have cancer? And these women will decide to hold up their heads and fight. They were women who had lost their spark and who will become warriors. It's a terrible thing to say, but this is a book that was written thanks to cancer. These women will regain their lives thanks to illness.
So with these themes in mind, you might expect quite a serious book. I know I did. But from the first pages, we're in a flash forward to near the end of the story, and we're on the streets of Paris. 4 women in disguise, they stepping out of a stolen car with fake weapons. Then we're back to the beginning of the story, Jeanne's diagnosis, a really painful, sad moment. So straight away, you're drawn in, wondering how on earth do we get from here to this very improbable, glamorous gangster situation.
It sounds very intriguing. Now, you've also been reading the first novel from the French-British playwright Alexis, or Alexis as we say in French, Michalik.
Yes, this is his first novel. You might have heard of his play Edmond. It's been a big hit here in France. This is his first novel, Loin, or Far. It's about the main character, Antoine, whose father disappeared when he was a child. Then in his mid-20s, he discovers a postcard which his father had sent to his mother after his disappearance, which had been lost in the post for some 20 years. So armed with this clue, him and his best friend and his younger sister set off on a voyage of discovery. I really enjoyed the dialogue. I also really liked the narrative style. It's not written from Antoine's perspective, but from that of his best friend, which adds an interesting element. It's also told in the third person, but switches to the first person throughout, which adds an almost theatrical line running through it. It feels like a character breaking away from a scene and launching into monologue, and the exploration of this close male friendship as well is very interesting.
Okay, there are so many debut novels out being released this year, 82 or something. Let's finish with another one of them.
Yes, Le Bal des Folles, or you could translate it as the Madwoman's Ball. It takes place in late 1800s in a Paris asylum. Now, back then, if you're a woman, you could be committed for very easily on the whim of a male relative, with everything from trauma to just being a bit unusual, being diagnosed as hysteria. And the famous French neurologist Dr. Charcot would hypnotize these women in public workshops, and the Parisians would come once a year for a ball in the hospital to watch these women waltzing around in their ball gowns, goggle at them. So all of this, the fictional story takes place within that historic setting, and it revolves around a character called Eugénie, whose father brings her, she's a rich woman, whose father brings her there when he finds out she believes she can speak to the dead. Now, don't get me wrong, I really love a ghost story, but in this case, I felt like it was already such a rich setting to explore, and the added supernatural storyline, I felt didn't add that much, and I was left wanting more on the women's lives and how they were treated in that asylum. So, but definitely a debut author to watch.
Okay. Kathy, thank you so much for telling us your book recommendations. Now we're going on a journey back in time to explore how Paris's newest major museum, the Quai Branly, has gathered its vast collection of the indigenous art and cultures of Africa, Asia, Oceania and the Americas. The Quai Branly was founded to celebrate non-European cultures by President Jacques Chirac in 2006. This season, visitors can discover the story behind its more than 75,000 works in the exhibition 20 Years of Collection Enrichment. Maud Julien takes us behind the scenes.
It's a statue that has witnessed 11 centuries of history. One of the most ancient known African sculptures, a rare testimony from the 10th century when the Ghanaian animist civilization fled Islamization in the region and hid in a cave in what's now known as the Dogon country in Mali.
The statue shows both feminine and masculine attributes. These were known as women kings. You see it has a beard. She is covered with jewelry, maybe pearls or gold, with scarifications, a sign of royalty, a sort of noble and ideal creature.
When it comes to moving the statue, one can't be too careful. once it's off its plinth, begins a perilous journey through the Quai Branly Museum's collections to its destination 2 floors below. Ahead lie several obstacles. The Gin&Quai will spend 4 months in this room, alongside many other precious acquisitions.
C'est aussi une exposition sur les métiers.
This is also an exhibition on the work we do here, meaning there will be conservators explaining their work as well as restorers. And all this, if you will, is part of our exhibition, which offers a backstage peek and also helps understand how a museum maintains and enhances its collection.
Faire fonctionner et enrichir les collections.
A glimpse behind the scenes to better understand the museum's genesis and how today it strives to remain alive and in motion.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much to our book critic, Cathy Cuddear-Clifford, for giving us your latest book recommendations. It's been a pleasure to have you. Now we're going to leave you with the blockbuster exhibition of the season. For the first time in nearly half a century, art lovers will be able to see the works of British artist Francis Bacon at Paris's Pompidou Centre. Remember our website. We're also on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.